When we think of horror in video games, our minds naturally go to the games that were built for the genre. Outlast, Soma, Layers of Fear, for example. These games are crafted to terrify us, with monsters, dark corridors, and relentless tension. But what about the horror we find lurking in games where we'd never expect? Horror doesn't just exist in the titles designed to scare us. Sometimes it hides in the most unlikely places, waiting to catch us off guard. Even in games that have little to do with horror, there are moments that can send chills down our spine. Whether it's the overwhelming isolation in a bright, colourful open world, a sudden jump scare in an action game, or a bizarre creature in an otherwise family-friendly adventure. These are the moments that remind us that horror doesn't need a label to unsettle us. All it needs is a way in. Today, we're going to explore these pockets of horror that pop up in non-horror video games. The moments that prove that fear can be just as powerful when it's unexpected. So, please join me, and let's talk about horror in non-horror games. Minecraft. Minecraft may seem, at first glance, like a light-hearted creative sandbox, a world of endless possibilities and freedom. But beneath its blocky landscapes lies an undeniable sense of isolation. The vast, open terrain that stretches as far as you can see feels both inviting and hauntingly empty. As you walk through rolling hills, sprawling forests, and towering mountains, there's a quiet that settles in. A silence so profound it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. The lack of other humans amplifies this sense of loneliness. You are the only inhabitant of an endless world that sprawls on infinitely in all directions. It's a strange feeling, being surrounded by so much space, yet feeling so profoundly alone. No matter how much you build or explore, the world always feels indifferent, cold. There's no one to witness your achievement or share in the experience. Even the animals and the occasional wandering villager seem more like ghosts than companions, briefly filling the empty space, but never staying long enough to ease the loneliness. As you dig deeper, traveling down into caves and through hidden ravines, the isolation becomes even more palpable. The silence underground is heavy, pressing in around you. With nothing but the echoes of your footsteps, these journeys into the earth are marked by a profound sense of solitude. There's no one around to hear your voice, no one to share in your discoveries. Just the walls of stone and the flickering torchlight. In Minecraft, even when the sun is shining, the open world can feel almost indifferent to your existence, making you a solitary figure in an unyielding landscape. The freedom to roam wherever you like is met with the knowledge that no matter where you go or what you do, you will always be alone. It's this profound isolation that gives Minecraft an unshakable, quiet eeriness, creating an experience where the biggest challenge isn't survival, but finding meaning in a world where you're the only one who's truly there. Subnautica. Subnautica starts like a thrilling adventure, a survival and crafting journey set in a vibrant underwater world filled with resources, alien flora, and unique sea life. At first, the shallow coral reef seems lively and inviting, a paradise beneath the waves. But as you venture further into the deep, that paradise quickly fades. The world becomes vast and dark, stretching into an endless depths, and what was once a playground begins to feel like an unforgiving alien abyss. For anyone with even a hint of thalassophobia, the fear of deep open water, the experience quickly shifts from exciting to terrifying. The bright colors and familiar reef fish disappear as you explore deeper zones. Suddenly, you find yourself surrounded by nothing but dark, shifting water, with visibility dropping to nearly zero. There's no sense of up or down, no landmarks, just an overwhelming sense of isolation in the vast, empty ocean. And in that moment, you realize that you're not alone. You're just unable to see what might be lurking in the shadows around you. And then, just as you start to get your bearings, you hear it. The low, echoing scream of a Reaper Leviathan. That ominous sound pierces the silence, sending a shock of dread down your spine. You turn around, scanning the murky waters, heart pounding, until suddenly, you see it. The colossal creature emerging from the dark. Its maw open and its massive body racing towards you. In that instant, the scale of the ocean and its mysteries become painfully real. Your only instinct is to flee, yet you feel small, helpless, and impossibly slow against the monstrous, unseen dangers in these depths. Subnautica captures the fear of the unknown in a way few games do. It's a survival experience, yes, but it's also an exploration of our primal fear, the vastness of the ocean, the hidden dangers lurking in its shadows, and the humbling realization that here, we are far from the top of the food chain. Subnautica makes you feel truly vulnerable, surrounded by miles of darkness, forced to confront the terror of what might lie beyond your view. Subnautica is not a horror game, it's a survival sandbox, but there's an unintentional aspect of horror that you need to see for yourself if you haven't played this game before. Garry's Mod. In Garry's Mod, you might think of the maps as a blank slate, a place to experiment, build, and play without limits. But when you load up an empty map, the experience can become something unexpectedly eerie. There's no objective, no real narrative, just you in a vast empty space, walking around an open map alone, without the usual chaos of friends or game objectives. This turns the setting into a strangely haunting experience, one that fills you with an inexplicable sense of unease. The silence is thick, broken only by your footsteps echoing through empty halls or across vast, open fields. Every empty room, hallway, and street corner is devoid of life. Yet the atmosphere feels alive, as if you're being watched. The game's minimalist lighting and blank spaces amplify this feeling. Walls stretch on, hallways twist into darkness, and every shadow seems to breathe, making you question what might be lurking just beyond your line of sight. As you wander, you begin to catch flickers in the corner of your eye. A shadow that shouldn't be there. A figure just around the corner. This is the paradox of Gmod's emptiness that makes it so unsettling. You know that logically there's nothing there, yet it feels as if something is hiding, watching. The feeling intensifies as you move deeper into the map, as the silence and isolation press in. The empty spaces evoke a creeping paranoia, convincing you that if you stay long enough, something will eventually appear. Or worse, something has been there all along. This eerie, unnerving quality gives Gmod's empty maps an unexpected horror, without any true horror mechanics. It's the sense of being watched, of not being alone in a place that's supposed to be empty. Gmod's horror is entirely in your head, but it's incredibly tangible. This phenomena is stemming from areas that are empty, that are not meant to be empty. It's the same feeling you get when you're walking around a large shopping center by yourself. There's meant to be people here, but it's just you. Alright, now let's move on to some specific moments in non-horror games rather than the general atmosphere. Super Mario 64. There's a few bits and pieces to talk about when it comes to scares in Super Mario 64, but I want to talk about the one that got me the most as a kid. If you've played the game before, You know the one I'm talking about. It's that damn eel. Down in Jolly Roger Bay, you're exploring the murky depths, surrounded by eerie silence and shadows as you swim around looking for stars. Then as you swim down, you see it, hiding in the side of a sunken ship. A massive, unsettling eel, barely visible in the darkness, with piercing yellow eyes that seem to follow you. As a kid, coming face to face with this creature felt like a nightmare. It's not just the size or its sharp-toothed grin, it's the tension of being so close to something that clearly doesn't belong in a Mario game. Something so strange and unsettling lurking in the water. The water itself adds another layer to the horror, as you're constantly running out of air, adding urgency and panic to the encounter. All you want to do is grab the star and get out of there. But the eel is only a few strokes away, reminding you that it's right there, in the shadows, watching. For a game as bright and whimsical as Super Mario 64, that eel is an unexpectedly eerie moment. Even years later, players remember that eel, a simple yet unforgettable reminder of how unsettling the unknown can be. Batman Arkham Knight. There are plenty of dark and intense moments throughout Batman Arkham Knight, but one moment stands out in particular for its sheer shock value. It's the Man-Bat jump scare. As players, we are used to the gritty and often terrifying elements of Gotham City, but nothing quite prepares you for this unexpected encounter. As you navigate the game, you're deep into the narrative, patrolling the city and dealing with the usual rogues gallery of villains. You might feel a sense of control, a feeling of being the Dark Knight himself. And then you come face to face with Man-Bat. It's a jump scare that catches you completely off guard. There he is. This massive, grotesque creature bursting out of the shadows with an ear-piercing screech. First time it happens, it's a complete shock. One moment you're gliding through the city, getting ready to grapple onto a building, and the next you're staring into the eyes of this monstrous figure. For many players, this moment became a hallmark of surprise, one that left an undeniable mark in the minds of everyone who encountered it. The contrast between the otherwise calculated gameplay and this raw, unexpected horror creates a jarring effect that lingers long after the jump scare is over. Even in a game filled with tension, that moment stands out as a masterclass in creating an incredible scare. Batman Arkham Asylum. For those unfamiliar with Gotham's villains, Scarecrow is known for his hallucinogenic fear toxin, and in Arkham Asylum, this toxin is brought to life in disturbing and mind-bending ways that leave a lasting impression. The Scarecrow sections are unlike anything else in the game. As you're progressing through the asylum, everything seems normal, until it's not. Suddenly, the environment begins to shift. Colors warp, corridors stretch, and reality itself starts to unravel. At first it's subtle, but soon you realize that Batman's been exposed to Scarecrow's fear toxin, and you're trapped in a nightmare where nothing feels safe or stable. The fear sequences take you through twisted versions of Gotham and Batman's worst memories, creating a disorienting and surreal atmosphere. You find yourself in disturbing scenes where Batman is vulnerable, like watching his parents' deaths over and over, or wandering through a world that has no escape. And then there's Scarecrow himself, towering over you as you struggle to escape his gaze. In these scenes, you're never sure what's real or where Scarecrow might appear next, amplifying the sense of helplessness and dread. The Scarecrow encounters aren't just unsettling for Batman, they're terrifying for the player too. One moment you're immersed in the usual gameplay, and then out of nowhere, the screen begins to glitch and it feels like the game has crashed. It's a perfect psychological trick, making your heart skip a beat as you wonder if you've lost your progress. And then, to make it even worse, you're taken back to what looks like the opening scene of the game, leaving you in a panic, thinking your save has been wiped, and you're about to start over. This level of psychological horror taps into a gamer's biggest fear, losing progress, having the game crash at a pivotal moment, and questioning whether what you're seeing is real or a trick. It's a bold fourth wall breaking moment that catches players completely off guard and amplifies the dread that Scarecrow brings. Dying Light. This last section feels a bit like a cheat, but it's one of my all-time favorite games, so I feel like I had to talk about it. Dying Light may label itself as survival horror, but for most of the game it's really more about survival. You're running across rooftops, scavenging for supplies, and taking down infected during the day. Sure, there are zombies everywhere, but you have the advantage of daylight, speed, and higher ground for the most part. And the infected are manageable. But then night falls, and everything changes. Suddenly, the familiar streets and safe rooftops become a death trap. The regular infected give way to terrifying volatiles, powerful, fast, and almost unstoppable creatures that hunt you with relentless aggression. They have heightened senses, and they are everywhere, making it nearly impossible to take them head on. Every decision becomes a gamble. Do you stick to the shadows and creep along, hoping to avoid their gaze? Or do you risk the open streets, knowing it might be a death sentence? Your tools and skills, which felt empowering in daylight, now feel like flimsy defenses against the creatures that own the night. Nighttime in Dying Light captures a visceral kind of horror, turning a familiar world into a terrifying one. The gameplay shifts from action-packed survival to desperate evasion and fear, as the once manageable environment feels hostile and claustrophobic. You are no longer the hunter, you are the hunted. And that's where Dying Light taps into true horror, making you feel that the only goal, the only instinct, is to make it to sunrise. Well, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. There's plenty in this topic that I didn't get a chance to go over. If you wanted me to touch on this in a part 2, or maybe one of these games deserves their own Let's Talk About video, please let me know in the comments. Once again, thank you all for watching, and have a good day.